Good morning. I am Nadine Pinar. I'm your lecturer for Numeracy and Mathematics 1, NM 21. Welcome to this course, DJP NM 21. Like I said, I am your tutor and I will mark your examination scripts for this subject. In this presentation, I will focus on general guidelines that I want everyone to keep in mind when writing an examination. Subject outcomes. This subject or module examines the following: developing numeracy in learners using different concepts. Also, using numbers in everyday life. Activities for teaching, sorting, or classification. Also, lesson plans on different topics. Teaching hand-eye coordination and visual training. When it comes to different concepts of measurements, let's look at mass. How will we teach this concept to our learners, our little ones? For instance, when it comes to mass, how will I as a teacher introduce this topic? At this early stage of the learners, we should now introduce words like light, heavy, light, lighter, lightest, heavy, heavier, heaviest. So what we can do is ask learners to pick up some objects. Ask them whether they find it, which one do they find heavier, or which one do they find to be light, or which one do they find to be heavy. This is how they get the grasp, the concept of mass. You can also read books to them. Like for instance, Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And then we could ask them, who do they think are the heaviest in the story? Papa Bear, Mama Bear, or Baby Bear? Or which one of them will be the lightest? Because now they have heard the story and they can now draw a conclusion. Another concept, length. How should I introduce length to my little ones? Here, we use comparison as well. Let them compare objects that they have right in front of them. Maybe two of them compare the length of their pencils. Which one is longer and which pencil is shorter? This is how they will understand the concept of length. They can even compare their fingers. Ask them which of the fingers are the longest, which of their fingers are the shortest. Another concept, capacity. How can I introduce capacity? Let them use objects like glass, a cup, a bucket. Ask one of them to fill it up to full, because now we're going to use concepts like full, half full, and empty. Ask the learner to fill the cup with water. Ask the other one to fill it half with water. And ask the other learner to keep the cup empty. So here, the concept for these little learners should be full, half full, or empty. Time. How can I introduce time to these learners? Time for them is something that they will grasp as they grow older. For now, let's start with the days of the week. We can make a calendar in our class, and every day these learners have to give the name of the day, We can even ask them to make their own calendars, making use of pictures. What do I like doing on a Monday? What do I like doing on a Saturday? If they go watch sports or play with their friends, or what do they do on Sundays, so that they can start having the concept of days. Or in your class, have the months of the year. Whose birthdays will it be this month? And you can make it special for the little ones. If it's his birthday or her birthday, let them dress maybe in their famous character clothing. So they know now, tomorrow I can dress differently because tomorrow it's my birthday. That is how we can introduce the measurement of time. Right, what are the different skills for counting? We have rote counting. What should the learners be able to do when we talk about rote counting? Learners should know the names of the numerals in order, in the correct order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is rote counting, just to know the names of the numerals. And here we can have rhymes for them, like 1, 2, buckle my shoe, those rhymes, so that they can just know which numeral follows which. Another counting skill, rational counting. Rational counting now, here it requires for the learner to now match the numeral with the number of objects. If they say 2, the learner should know how many objects 2 will be. So here I can ask my learners to give me a group of, I can use bottle caps, I can use stones. Give me 5 stones, so that the learner have the concept of, or the skill to know that the numeral is now connected to a number of objects. Examples of exam questions. Yeah, we explain, you need to explain how to teach the children both of these skills. When it comes to different learning styles, visual. I need to prepare my lesson for all the learners in my class. But I need to be able to identify which learners learn more visual. So how do I identify these learners? So the characteristics of these learners that learn through more visual activities will be, these learners love images, they love pictures, they like to color, they love drawing. That is how I identify these learners. So from there, I should be able to know how to prepare my lesson for these learners so that they can grasp whatever I have to learn to them. Another learning style, auditory. Auditory meaning to listen and to talk. So how does these learners learn? They learn through listening and speaking. This is how these learners, so they will learn more through storytelling or jokes, even if you want to. This is how these learners, because what they hear is what they remember more. Then another learning style, kinesthetics. These learners depend on touching. These are the learners that want to do practical things. They are the learners that we should give the play-doh to do things, to feel things. And these are the learners that also like to take part in sports or in exercise, because they learn more through touching. So I should be able to know how to teach to all my learners, but I need to first identify who learns at what style. So there you have it. Students should be able to list characteristics of these styles. How to identify these learners. When it comes to data analysis, there we have a graph. On this graph, like we see there, we have rainfall for the first 6 months in Windhoek during 2011. There I have my rainfall in millimeters. Now the questions, when it comes to data analysis, the questions will be based on what we have in front of us. Some examples of questions. Let's take the first one. How much rainfall was received during January? Go back to my graph. Now I find January. I see 50 millimeters of rainfall was received during 2011 in Windhoek. Go to my next question. Which month received the least rainfall? So now, what do I have there? There, June. So from my graph, I can immediately identify that June received the least rainfall for that year. Sorry. The third question. What is the difference between the highest and the lowest rainfall figures? Difference. When it comes to difference, I find the highest, which is 70 millimeters. I find the lowest, which is 10 millimeters. And now I subtract, I minus 70 minus 10, and the difference will now be 60 millimeters. When I have to find the difference, I subtract the highest from the lowest. What is the sum of the rainfall received during the 6 months? Sum. Yeah, my word here that I should look for is sum. Sum meaning I add. So we can quickly add 50 plus 70 plus 60 plus what is this? 30, 20 and 10. Altogether it is 240 millimeters of rainfall that Windhoek received for that first 6 months during 2011. Sum, I add. What is the average rainfall received for the 6 months? How will I get the average? The average is I take the 6 months, I add, I already have the sum, and like we said, 240 millimeters. So I now divide the sum through the number of items, meaning there are 6 months. 240 divided by the 6 months will give me 40 millimeters on average. So if I have to find the average, I take the sum, meaning I add everything, and then I divide it by the number of items. Just for an example, in your class, if you have to find the average for a certain subject, you add all your learners. If you have, for instance, 30 learners in your class, you add up all their marks, and now you divide it by the 30 learners, and that will give you the average. Thank you. When it comes to fractions, this is 3/4. This we call the dividing line. This is a fraction. The whole number there is a fraction. The number above the dividing line we call the numerator. The number below the dividing line we call the denominator. If we have to compare fractions that has the same numerator but different denominators, how do I do that? Let's look at the example here. Now we have to understand that the denominator tells me into how many pieces I must divide the whole. An example, if I have to cut an apple in half, I divide that apple into 2 pieces. if I have to divide an apple into quarters, I will divide my apple into 4 pieces. So here I have the whole, which is divided into 4 pieces. 1, 2, 3, 4 equal parts. That is what my denominator tells me. The next one, the denominator tells me I have to divide my whole into 6 equal parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 equal parts. Now, 3 parts of the 4 parts, 1, 2, 3. Here I have 3 parts of the 6 parts. And as you can see, the parts that, or the 3 parts that is the biggest, is the one where we have divided into 4 equal parts, equal pieces. Which means the bigger the denominator, the smaller the fraction. The bigger the denominator, 6 is bigger than 4. The bigger the denominator, the smaller the fraction. This is what we can learn from here. Thank you. When it comes to spatial awareness, what do we have to know for this examination? The concept, spatial awareness, important. The characteristics of poor spatial awareness. How do I then identify a learner with poor spatial awareness? How to expand learners' vocabulary of spatial concepts. And lastly, we also need to know how to plan a lesson to teach spatial concepts. 2- and 3-dimensional shapes. Very important that we should know the difference between a 2-dimensional shape and a 3-dimensional shape, because I need to be able to identify from a group of shapes which ones are 2-dimensional and which ones are 3-dimensional. 2-dimensional, there are only 2 dimensions involved here: length and width. We only have 2 dimensions, length and width. I usually call it a flat shape. 3-dimensional shape is a shape with 3 dimensions, which involves length, width, and height. Those are cubes, like a dice, the dice that we play games with. That is a cube. It is a 3-dimensional shape because it is length. It has length, width, and height. Right. How will I introduce lessons for the following? Important that I should know this. When I want to introduce counting to my learners, how will I go about with my lesson plan to introduce counting? Also, subitizing. How will I introduce a lesson on subitizing? How will I introduce a lesson on ordering and comparing? And how will I introduce a lesson on doubling and halving? We need to know that as well. Let's look at a word problem, because I need to teach my learners how to be able to understand a word problem. The problem that we have here in front of us is Mary has 36 oranges. She wants to share them equally among her friends, her 9 friends. How many oranges does each one get? What should I consider before I want to answer this question? What are the things that I should consider in this word problem, in this problem that I have in front of me? First, I ask myself, what happens in the problem? So what happens in this problem that we have in front of us? Mary has 36 oranges and she wants to share it equally among her 9 friends. This is the problem that we have here. Now what is required in the answer? How many oranges does each one get? This is what I should answer. This is what the question says. How many oranges does each one get? Right. Another point to consider is, what information do I have to help me? I have 36. I have equally. I have 9. So what will I do to answer this question? Share. Share meaning I divide them amongst. And how will I divide? I will divide them equally. So meaning 36 divided by 9 will give me the amount or the number of oranges that each of her friends will get. Just examples on examination questions. Spatial awareness is a crucial development that should be mastered by all children. Explain the different activities that could help learners to develop their mathematical spatial vocabulary. Now there are 6 activities, and usually it is required from you to answer some of them, all of them. So you should know, as a student, you should know how to help the learners or give activities to learners that has a problem with spatial awareness. Another example of an examination question is, draw the following figures and write 2 properties of each. The example here is a cube, a trapezium, and a circle. So I need to know I should be able to draw the figures, and I should be able to know the properties. What differentiate the cube from a square? I should know the properties of all my shapes, and I should be able to draw all my shapes as a student. Right, when it comes to sequencing, a number sequence is a list of numbers written in a particular order. Usually we are asked, write down the next 2 numbers and also the rule in each sequence below. Let's look at the one that we have in front of us. We have 3, 6, 12, 24. Now, what happened that I get from 3 to 6, from 6 to 12, from 12 to 24? So I should first find the rule. So as I can see here, I multiplied by 2 every time. 3 times 2 gives me 6. 6 times 2 gives me 12. 12 times 2 gives me 24. So what will be my next 2 numbers then? So 24 times 2 will be 48, and 48 times 2. So that is my sequence and my rule. So I times by 2 and then I complete my sequence. Here, another sequence. I have 1001, 801, 601. So I should determine what is the rule here. I check. The difference between these two is 200. The difference between these two is 200. So I subtract by 200 every time. So my rule is subtraction of 200. I subtract 200 from the previous number. So my next number will now be 401, and the next number, what will be the next number in my sequence? Alright, to conclude this, allocation of marks. The examination requires students to give examples of how they will do certain activities rather than asking the recalling of facts. So how will you do certain activities? How will you teach this? Or write out a lesson plan on a specific activity. Students should also be able to give examples on how they will teach some topics. Most of the questions that you will get have words like calculate, mention, define, and explain. Solve and describe. Your exam is out of a total of 100 marks, and you have 2 hours to complete your examination. You will answer on the question paper. On your exam cover, on the cover page, be aware of the following. Incomplete information may cause your exam paper to be marked by a wrong tutor. So please fill in the correct information and complete everything that is required from you. Write your student number clearly and correctly. Write your surname and name on the space or the column provided. Note, subject code must be correct. For example, DJP-NM21, as well as the subject name, numeracy and mathematics 1. Fill in all other required information to make sure that the cover page is correctly completed. Just a few common errors that's made by students. Writing wrong subject codes on cover page. These things occur. Providing a wrong student number. You might be so nervous that you forget your student number. Papers not stapled tight and some pages get lost. Copying from each other. Writing answers without using your own words and as much as possible. Some of you left some questions unanswered. Some handwriting were unreadable, and some people wrote too little comparing to marks allocation. You should look at the number of marks that's required from a question when you answer. If the question says 5 marks, there's no way that you can just give one answer and expect full marks. Please use language that is understandable to the marker. Some of you come to the exam unprepared. Required of students, read the questions carefully and understand what is asked. Answer all your questions. Don't leave spaces. Answer all your questions. You never know. As a teacher, always use practical examples where necessary. This will help you to earn good marks. Practical examples of what you have experienced. Provide sufficient answers, meaning don't write too little or too much. Also check the marks allocated to determine the length of your answer. Good luck. Be mindful of the time as you are writing the examination. Spend at least 2 minutes per mark. Don't waste time with questions that you don't know. Go to the ones you are comfortable with and then return to the more difficult ones. Please prepare well in advance for the examination and don't wait till the last minute to study. If you are not ready, you will become nervous during the examination, and this could lead to failure. Write as neat as you can. And remember, there is no substitute for hard work. I thank you.